This is why poor people who don't know true love. My sister sneers at us with contempt. To be honest, I'm not particularly bothered by her words. I believe we have everything we truly need. However, I won't forgive her for dragging my precious niece into the troubles caused by this so-called true love. Look at my drawing. Could it be? Yes. Remember this well. The truth that my niece tried so desperately to convey must surely be what true love really is. My name is Blair, and I'm 36 years old. I got married about 3 years ago. I believe that the timing of marriage varies for everyone depending on their encounters and circumstances. That's why I've never worried too much about being early or late. However, my sister often told me I was late or that I would end up on the shelf. My sister Elle certainly married much earlier than I did. Right after graduating from college, instead of starting a career, she got married and promptly became a full-time housewife. Her husband was her college classmate. Due to his excellent academic performance, he landed a job at a major company after graduation and apparently earned a good salary. Perhaps this sense of superiority went to Elle's head. As for me, I hadn't even dated much, let alone found a marriage partner, until my late 20s. Sorry for being one of life's winners, Elle would tease me whenever we met at family gatherings. Well, I wasn't particularly anxious about it, which seemed to frustrate Elle. Eventually, I too found someone, and now I'm enjoying a peaceful and happy married life. I'm an ordinary office worker, though I started in a somewhat unconventional job. We both earn decent incomes, and we don't have any particular financial struggles. Despite this, Elle often sneered at us. It must be tough having to both work to make ends meet. Of course, neither I nor my husband Nathan paid much attention to such comments. I think it's precisely because we share similar values that we were drawn to each other. Elle has a daughter named Darla. Under normal circumstances, Darla would have been raised primarily by Elle and her husband. Honestly, I can't imagine what kind of child she would have become in that case. But in reality, it would be hard to say that Darla was purely raised by Elle and her husband. This was because Elle often left Darla with us and went out somewhere. During this period, I was working from home due to the pandemic. Elle seemed to see this as a convenient opportunity. While Elle laughed, saying things like, "Unlike you poor folks, I have a busy social life," the reality was that she was just shopping or following her favorite artist around. Elle seemed to be spending her husband's earnings mostly on herself. While she was out having fun, we took care of Darla. It happened more than half the week at times, which tells you just how self-centered Elle was. Elle's husband seemed genuinely busy. When we gathered as a family, he spoke sadly about not being able to spend time with Darla. Elle apparently hadn't told her husband about frequently leaving Darla with us. He believed Elle was properly raising Darla. He was pleased, thinking Darla's growth was due to Elle's proper discipline and education. But the reality was different. I have no intention of claiming that we raised Darla. Elle and her husband are Darla's parents, period. However, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we were present throughout Darla's growth process. Darla used to be a child who often threw tantrums. When things didn't go her way, she would cry and scream, biting and throwing things around. Come to think of it, in my distant memories, Elle was similarly selfish. Back when we used to play together, I tried my best to be a good older sister to Elle. However, we were both children then. Though Elle and I are 5 years apart, it wasn't enough of an age difference to change that fact. I was at a loss about how to handle Elle's selfishness and ended up having to rely on our mother. Perhaps it was because those memories were stirred up that I wanted to be a good aunt to Darla. It's not that I didn't want Darla to become like Elle. I was probably similar as a child. From our parents' perspective, there probably wasn't much difference between us. I just wanted to do for Darla, even in small ways, what I couldn't do for Elle back then. Nathan agreed with my thoughts on this. Blair, we'll probably have our own kids someday, so this could be good experience, right? Though Nathan said this jokingly, in reality, he doted on Darla regardless of such reasoning. He enthusiastically joined in her play activities, even bringing professional-grade art supplies for drawing. I couldn't help but smile wryly, wondering who was the child here. I myself was so captivated by Darla's cuteness that I found myself getting caught up in playing with her. As we spent time together like this, Darla became completely attached to us. Her tantrums gradually disappeared, and she became such a good child that we almost felt a bit lonely. However, such happy times couldn't last forever. Around the time Darla turned 5, Elle and her husband divorced. The exact reason wasn't clear. Elle said it was her husband's fault, while her husband said it was his own shortcoming. We could only guess that it was probably because Elle's husband had focused too much on work. That's all we could surmise at the time. After all, it was between husband and wife. We shouldn't pry too much into their affairs. While the matter between the couple was settled, the issue was Darla. When I asked out of concern, I learned that Elle would have custody. Elle's husband apparently wanted to raise Darla himself but had to give up after being pressured by Elle. Elle, are you sure you'll be okay on your own? When I asked out of concern, Elle just scoffed at me. I'll be fine. I'll work part-time, and my ex-husband is paying plenty in child support. Financial concerns were one thing, but we were more worried about whether Elle had the emotional capacity to raise Darla alone. That's why Nathan and I emphasized to Elle that she should rely on us or our parents if needed. Elle gave only non-committal responses to our words. While worried, we thought we would see Darla soon enough. Given Elle's previous lifestyle, it wouldn't have been surprising if she had relied on us right away. Because we thought this, we didn't press the matter further. However, the reality defied our expectations. For some reason, Elle rarely relied on us. At least, the occasions when Elle would visit us asking us to look after Darla decreased dramatically. We thought she might be relying on our parents, but when we contacted them to ask, that didn't seem to be the case either. When we tried to contact her, Elle rarely responded. Sometimes she would answer the phone when she felt like it, but on those occasions, Elle was invariably in an oddly good mood. You worry too much. I'm happier now than before. Because I've found true love. That's good, but is Darla okay? I asked about my biggest concern while harboring doubts about Elle on the other end of the phone. In response, Elle would say vague, incomprehensible things in a casual tone. She's totally fine. She's getting plenty of attention. Attention from whom? Oh, I'm being called. Talk to you later. And with that, Elle would end the call without answering my questions. In the end, we couldn't understand the detailed situation. Worried, I visited Elle's apartment, but whether we just missed each other or not, I couldn't meet Darla. When our parents, who were similarly concerned, visited Elle's house, she was apparently home, and they were able to meet Darla. According to our parents, Darla seemed somewhat listless. But Elle just brushed it off, saying, "It's just today." Since Darla wasn't extremely emaciated or anything, they had to accept Elle's words at face value. "I hope nothing's wrong. Just something feels concerning." "I know what you mean." Of course, if Elle was raising Darla with love, we would have nothing to say. But knowing her previous state of near abandonment, we couldn't help but worry. Time passed without us being able to meet Darla, and before we knew it, she was about to start elementary school. "Blair, can you watch my daughter again?" Elle suddenly started leaving Darla with us again. While this was what we had hoped for, we honestly didn't understand what was going on. "That's fine, but weren't you managing okay?" One Sunday morning, when Elle suddenly showed up at our house with Darla, I asked while tilting my head in confusion. "Well, various things happened." "Wait, what happened to your face? Did something happen at work?" Elle's face was slightly swollen on one side, as if she had been hit. When I asked about it, Elle hastily brushed it off with, "It's nothing." More importantly, Darla's about to start elementary school. Sensing that I was about to press further, Elle cut me off with a loud voice. As I gave her a suspicious look, Elle continued pushing forward. "So, I want to buy her a nice backpack for school. Would you help me?" "Oh, a backpack. Yes, she'll need one. How much do you need?" Thinking that Elle, who had always boasted about being wealthy, might be struggling financially now, I asked, but Elle named an unbelievable amount. About $1,000. What? Why would you buy something so expensive?" I looked at her questioningly. Elle returned my gaze with an aggressive stare and flared nostrils. "I want to buy her a custom backpack so she won't be made fun of by other kids at school." Wouldn't such a backpack make her stand out more and potentially become a target for teasing? I thought that during childhood, differences from others often become the cause of rejection and negativity. That's not true. At least I can buy her a backpack she won't feel insecure about. This is why poor people who don't know true love. Honestly, Elle's words weren't convincing. But I thought if it would make Darla happy, it might be worth it. Nathan would probably laugh and allow such an expense for that purpose. While we were talking, Darla kept watching us cautiously. After I greeted her with a slightly too loud voice in my excitement to see her again, she had been like this the whole time. About a year ago, Darla had become completely comfortable with us. She would run to me or Nathan without hesitation, asking to do this or that. She used to talk about her favorite characters with a big smile and loud voice. But now, Darla showed none of that behavior. Though her eyes were wide open as she looked at me, she seemed hesitant, hiding behind Elle. I don't understand why she had become like this. However, if this could be an opportunity for Darla to take our hands without hesitation again, I didn't want to hesitate. "All right. $1,000 it is. I'll have it ready next time." I agreed to Elle's proposal and decided to provide the funds for Darla's expensive backpack. When I checked with Nathan via text, he readily agreed as expected, for which I was incredibly grateful. That's a huge help. Then, please take care of Darla. Saying this, Elle announced she had work and hurriedly left. Behind her stood Darla, somewhat downcast and frozen in place. I crouched down to meet her eye level and gently called out to her. Darla, do you remember me? I asked, worried it would be heartbreaking if she had forgotten me, but my concerns were unfounded. Darla's face turned bright red as she nodded vigorously, strongly affirming. Blair, I remember because you always played with me. Relieved at her words, I raised my hand to pat her head. Suddenly, Darla's body jerked in fear. The warmth had drained from her face, leaving it almost pale. I quickly withdrew my hand and waved it gently while smiling at Darla. I'm so glad you remember. I would have been a bit sad if you'd forgotten. Thank you for remembering. Shall we play? Maybe the old toys are too childish now. Speaking gently and carefully trying to ease her wariness, I invited Darla into the house and brought out her toy box, which I had kept clean and ready to use at any time. While playing with Darla, I suspected Elle. I thought that maybe Elle was treating Darla roughly. But that thought quickly dissipated. Until just now, Darla had been right beside Elle, hiding in her shadow. If Darla was being treated harshly by Elle, wouldn't she want to stay as far away as possible? Moreover, there were no visible injuries or bruises on Darla's body. I discreetly observed while playing with her but couldn't find any such marks. But if that's not it, what explains Darla's reactions? That night, after Darla had gone home, Nathan and I exchanged thoughts. Nathan had returned home around noon and was also happy to reunite with Darla, though I had warned him beforehand to keep his volume down. Today, both Nathan and I had been careful not to frighten Darla while playing with her. Though Darla gradually became less wary, she was oddly quiet. She used to chat endlessly about her favorite characters, trying to convey their appeal. Both Nathan and I had found that chatty Darla endearing, but today we didn't see that side of her, which made us a bit sad. At least Elle doesn't seem to be doing anything to her. That seems to be the case. Then what we need to consider is Elle's boyfriend. I nodded at Nathan's words after he thought it through. In the current situation, the most likely negative influence on Darla would be the man Elle was dating. The daycare where Darla spent half the week was another possibility. However, it seemed unlikely that anything would happen at a daycare center where many people were watching, so we ruled that out for now. To begin with, we didn't know the real reason for Elle's divorce. There was a possibility that Elle had been having an affair and that relationship had continued. And perhaps that person was having a negative impact on Darla. But even if that's true, there's not much we can do about it. That's the frustrating part. Even if our speculation was correct, we couldn't install surveillance cameras in Elle's house to monitor the suspicious person's actions. Installing surveillance cameras in someone else's house without permission would be nothing short of criminal. If we could get Elle's permission, it would be different, but we couldn't think of any convincing reason. Even hypothetically, if Elle had a partner, there's no way she would agree to cameras meant to monitor that person's behavior. Besides, at this point, everything was just speculation. If only we had some concrete evidence that would allow us to take action, but unfortunately, we're neither police officers nor detectives. We have neither the authority nor the skills to investigate. We can only watch for now. It would be good if we could hear from Darla, but that seems difficult right now. Yes, it's frustrating. Exchanging such opinions, we continued to look after Darla when she was left with us. I think we were carefully and gently able to help her lower her guard. However, whenever we tried to ask about her home situation, Darla would clam up tight. Each time, she showed signs of fear, so something was definitely happening at home. But that's all we could understand. Meanwhile, Elle was showing suspicious behavior. When I told our parents about the backpack, it turned out Elle had also asked them for money for a backpack. Not only that, but the backpack Darla was carrying when she started elementary school was clearly not new. Though it had been repaired, the scratches and wear couldn't be completely hidden. It was obviously either secondhand or handed down from someone. Can you explain what's going on? It was during a family gathering. Since it was centered around my side of the family, Elle was naturally participating, but surprisingly, she said she would leave Darla with us and go out. Leaving Darla with Nathan, I confronted Elle behind the house, demanding an explanation about her departure and the backpack situation. I can't help it because of work. And for the backpack, I thought we should take good care of the one a neighbor kindly gave us. Her response was half-defiant excuses. About the money for the backpack, I just forgot that I had asked our parents too. Then you can return the money to either me or our parents, right? Though I didn't quite grab her by the collar, I closed the distance with that kind of feeling and stared her down. Elle obviously became flustered and her gaze wandered. But her tone remained defiant. I can't. I accidentally used it all for payments. What? What payments? Taxes, water bills, electricity bills. There are plenty of things, aren't there? Elle raised her voice, trying to brush it off with force. Elle's appearance was generally worn down, making it hard to believe she was the same person who had always lorded her money over others just a few years ago. With mixed feelings, I voiced another concern. Fine, let's leave that aside. There's something else I want to know. You're seeing someone now, aren't you? At that question, Elle's face visibly tensed. At least there was no doubt she was seeing someone. What about it? Perhaps feeling guilty about something, Elle gave an evasive answer. To probe this vagueness, I fixed her with a stern gaze. You can date whoever you want. But you better not be involving Darla in this. Receiving my gaze and words, Elle's face twisted bitterly. That's impossible. Well, I have to go now. Elle ran away. I thought about chasing and catching her, but Elle was quick on her feet. I couldn't just stand there forever, so I returned to the house. When I entered the living room, there was Darla, lying on the floor drawing something. Darla was working in the sketchbook that Nathan had given her. Normally, I would have smiled at the sight of my niece enjoying her drawing. But something felt off. Darla's face was dead serious. She didn't seem to be enjoying herself at all. The other relatives also seemed unsure how to approach her, finding it difficult to start a conversation. As I was puzzling over this, Nathan walked up beside me and asked, "How did it go?" It was obvious he was asking about Elle. Keeping some distance from the relatives, I told him that Elle was apparently seeing someone and that seemed to be causing some kind of problem. Elle seems to be holding something back that she can't talk about, I said. Having lived as sisters for so many years, I could sense it. The current Elle was harboring something she felt guilty about, something she both wanted and didn't want to talk about. I see, maybe it's the same with Darla. What do you mean? At that, Nathan said, "Excuse me for a moment," to Darla and showed me several of the drawings she had made. There was a strange world depicted in them. A big bird and a small bird. The two colorful birds might be parent and child. Though crude, they had their wings and beaks wide open. Were they trying to fly, or were they crying out? If that was all, it might have seemed merely touching. But Darla's several drawings didn't end there. For some reason, the parent and child birds had large red X marks on them, or were surrounded by what looked like walls. I can't quite explain it, but they seemed confined. Near these restricted birds was a frightening animal. Or maybe it wasn't even an animal. Something with gleaming claws and fangs, and glowing red eyes. It appeared to be either threatening or attacking the parent and child birds. What is this? There's no doubt Darla is trying to tell us something through these drawings. But that. Just then, look at my drawing because I drew it well. Darla called out loudly, holding up her picture to show all the relatives. Though the relatives said things like, "How nice," and "You drew it really well," they seemed unable to say anything more. As Darla's shoulders drooped at the relatives' reactions, she spotted us and hurriedly came over. "Hey, look at my drawing because I drew it well." It must be her masterpiece. It was drawn more carefully and clearly than any of her previous pictures. But Darla's face as she showed it wasn't filled with the excitement or joy of completing such a work. It was an expression of anxiety and desperation, so intense it made my breath catch. I could understand why the relatives were at a loss for words. Covering the entire white paper that Darla held up was a colorful parent and child bird pair and a pitch-black spider. The spider's thread was entangling the parent and child birds. Yet strangely, the parent bird had heart marks in its eyes. Meanwhile, the baby bird was crying sad tears. Both birds had masks on their beaks. And several of the spider's hands were holding up similar masks triumphantly. Furthermore, at its feet were some numbers inscribed. "How is it?" Darla looked straight up at us who were studying the picture. As if pleading for something. We understood that these drawings represented what Darla most wanted to tell us right now. But I wasn't clever enough to immediately understand what it meant, nor did I have expertise in art. But maybe Nathan would understand. Wait, could it be? As if answering my hopes, Nathan's face lit up as something clicked. "Did you figure it out?" As expected of a genius artist. "No, I'm just a second-rate artist." Nathan scratched his cheek embarrassedly at my words. Nathan's profession is an artist. My encounter with him was at his exhibition, which I had wandered into seeking solace after failing at work. To be honest, even now that I'm married to Nathan, I'm not very knowledgeable about art. But I was definitely moved by Nathan's series of paintings expressing sorrow that were displayed then. Are these really such good works? When I was overwhelmed with emotion and excitement, a man who was there asked me that question. Indignant at his puzzled reaction, I passionately explained my impressions of the paintings to him. Needless to say, that man turned out to be Nathan himself, the artist who had painted them. From there, we started dating and eventually got married. Well, setting aside our love story, Nathan, who has been involved with art far more than I have, would surely understand the intention behind Darla's drawings. Nathan smiled wryly at my expectant gaze and said, "Actually, you don't need to be an artist to understand this. It's more like mathematics, noticing similarities and seeking solutions." After this preface, Nathan whispered his thoughts in my ear. Hearing them, I nodded vigorously. Yes. That must be it. Nathan's deduction made sense of everything. While we might not understand all the details, at least we could see the overall picture. Did you understand? Darla anxiously asked us as we nodded to each other. I nodded firmly to her. Darla, will you nod in response to our questions? That way you won't break your promise, right? Those words alone seemed to convey the meaning. Darla's eyes widened, and they began to sparkle. The gathered relatives watched us curiously. A week and some days later, on a Sunday, I was hiding in the shadows, trying to stay out of sight as much as possible. In my hand was a smartphone for capturing evidence. I had upgraded to one with better camera capabilities to record everything that was about to happen without missing anything. Since I had been thinking about replacing my phone anyway, it worked out well. While I waited, voices began to come from inside. I pointed the camera toward the slightly open window in time with the voices. I was a bit worried about being noticed, but the people inside, except for one, seemed unaware of my presence. So, did you get it ready? The money? A man's voice that I couldn't quite place rang out. Immediately after came Elle's voice. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. My cards are maxed out now. Elle's voice was timid. In contrast, the man's voice was aggressive. I told you, didn't I? Today was the deadline. Besides, I told you to borrow money from your family or whatever, but you couldn't even manage that. Dennis, it was impossible. They were clearly suspicious of me. Besides, weren't you the one who told me not to talk about anything? The exchange confirmed what we had already checked. Both Elle and Darla had been told by this man called Dennis not to talk. I had once been forcibly shown a video of an artist Elle was obsessed with. From that time, I vaguely remembered his name, face, and voice. Now, when Elle spoke his name, various pieces of information finally connected in my head. I still didn't understand the detailed flow of events. However, Elle must have ended up divorcing her previous husband as a result of becoming infatuated with him. And from the current conversation, it became clear. For Elle, Dennis was more than just someone she had an affair with. He was her true love. But for Dennis, Elle was nothing more than a source of money. Muffled sounds came from inside. Looking directly into the room would risk being discovered, so I couldn't see clearly. Most likely, Dennis was hitting Elle. If you can't get the money ready, I have no use for you anymore, old lady. But if you really still want to be with me, stop. Don't hurt Mama. Just as Dennis was about to say something while sneering at Elle, Darla hastily raised her voice. For none other than Elle's protection. You can make fun of me or roughly pat my head like you always do, but leave her alone. Darla's words made me understand anew. When Elle met with Dennis in this house, while Darla wasn't physically hit, she was treated roughly both mentally and physically, treated with contempt. As I bit my lip in anger at this, Elle said something unbelievable. That's right. When we first met, you said Darla was cute, didn't you? So Darla must have some value, right? I almost cried out from the intense emotions that welled up. Elle was now trying to use her daughter Darla as a tool to meet with Dennis. Even if she was my sister, this was unforgivable. Still, I had to hold back my voice, desperately keeping it suppressed in my throat. But Elle, unaware of my feelings, continued to say even more shameless things. Until I can get the money, keep coming to see this child. Please. Ha ha ha, are you stupid, old lady? However, Dennis flatly rejected Elle's request. Maintaining his sneering smile, Dennis revealed a cruel truth to Elle. That was just an excuse to meet you for money. I couldn't care less about this unattractive brat. Though Elle let out a shocked gasp, Dennis continued speaking without paying her any attention. I thought if I acted like I cared about this brat, you'd be happy thinking I accepted you as a single mother too. Then I thought you'd give me more money. What? Did you actually take that seriously and try to sacrifice your child? That's pretty awful, isn't it, Darla? And Dennis laughed. It was probably mockery directed at both Elle and Darla. Honestly, I was furious with Elle too. Using even her own daughter Darla to attract Dennis's attention was absolutely unforgivable. But at the same time, I felt angry about my sister being mocked. Even though I knew it was her own fault. So when I judged we had enough evidence, my patience reached its limit. You're the worst one here, I declared, throwing open the window of Elle's apartment room. Blair. Elle's eyes widened at my sudden appearance, while Darla's eyes sparkled. We knew Dennis would come to threaten Elle today. That's why I had gone around to the back of the apartment and was filming everything. To get evidence that would help resolve this situation one way or another, regardless of who the person was. I was thankful Elle's room was on the first floor. Otherwise, I would have struggled to figure out how to hide and film the situation. Dennis was dumbfounded at my appearance, not understanding what was happening. I provocatively told him, "Your outrageous behavior ends today. I've recorded everything that just happened. Should I take this to the police? Or maybe release it online? I'm sure the gossip news sites would love this kind of scandal." The moment I said that, Dennis's handsome face twisted horribly. Then, with that twisted face, he directed a threatening expression and loud voice at Elle and Darla. "You bitches! Didn't I tell you not to talk?" He had probably threatened that he would cut ties with Elle or make them suffer if they told anyone. But that was his big misunderstanding. They didn't say anything. At least, Darla didn't say a single word to us. Yes, Darla, who had been ordered not to talk by Dennis, had conveyed the situation to us through her drawings. He might call it childish logic, but Darla had kept her promise. That meant she could avoid feeling guilty or agitated about breaking the promise. That's why until today, neither Dennis or Elle had realized that Darla had told us about the situation. Then why are you here? Because evil never prospers in this world. More importantly, are you sure about this? I'm going to the police now. I waved my phone at the panicking Dennis. He glared at me. Wait right there, old lady. Normally, one wouldn't honestly wait but would run away. But I deliberately stayed put. Within 10 seconds, Dennis came around to the back and appeared. Hand over that phone, lady. If you do it now, I'll go easy on you and only rough you up a little. Perhaps because he realized I was just a woman with no weapons, Dennis reached out his hand with an obviously patronizing smile, demanding the phone. My, how kind. Or are you scared of an old lady like me? I returned his smile with one of the same vector. No way. Then what will you do if I say I don't want to hand over the phone? Will you try to sweet-talk me? Though I doubt you could. That provocation must have really gotten under his skin. He cursed at me vilely and then threatened me. If I had heard that without any preparation, I probably would have been scared too. But now, with everything prepared, I wasn't scared at all. Rather, I felt elated that he had said exactly what we wanted. Just hand over the phone, lady. What are you smiling about? Well, that was a threat just now, right? So that makes you guilty of criminal threatening. Saying this, I called out to the people behind Dennis. When Dennis turned around, realizing someone was behind him, he faced something he hadn't expected. Police. There stood 2 police officers. Right next to them stood Nathan. In Nathan's hand was a smartphone for reporting everything to the police. In other words, this entire sequence of events was what we had planned. If someone seemed likely to be in danger, we planned to report the situation to the police we had consulted with beforehand and have them intervene with an arrest for criminal threatening. However, we wanted to create clear evidence of criminal behavior, something that would ensure a conviction, if possible. That's why we created evidence and then used it as bait to provoke Dennis. I'm honestly relieved it worked out better than expected. This way, no matter what happens, we should be able to deal with this Dennis character. No way. I'm not getting arrested. He seemed to realize he was cornered. Dennis started to run away. I was standing in his direction of escape. He probably thought he could handle me any way he wanted. But that thought was a big mistake. Whether he tried to grab me or push me aside, I'm not sure. But I caught his approaching hand and smoothly pinned his body down. What? What's going on? Well, I learned self-defense against molesters at a police-sponsored class long ago. Guess those old skills came in handy. The 2 police officers properly secured Dennis, whom I had pinned to the ground. Damn it. Let me go. Hey, lady. Help me. Dennis called out to Elle for help. But Elle just stood there, dumbfounded by what was happening before her eyes. Perhaps she was disillusioned by Dennis's pathetic display. No. Not the police. Somebody help. Either way, Dennis naturally couldn't escape and was arrested, bringing this series of events to a temporary close. The starting point was probably Elle's affair. Elle had been enjoying a free life thanks to her husband. But even that wasn't enough for Elle. Against better judgment, she sought an even more exciting life. As a result, she became obsessed with following artists around and fell for the handsome Dennis. Then she started meeting him at his invitation and began a relationship. Seeing this lifestyle firsthand was what made Elle's husband give up on her, which was apparently the true story behind the divorce. If she was abandoning housework and childcare to be obsessed with someone else, that was a natural result. However, giving up custody of Darla wasn't what he wanted. That's why her ex-husband provided generous child support to ensure at least Darla wouldn't suffer hardship. But that only made Elle more selfish. She used the minimum necessary amount for Darla and spent most of the money on Dennis. Perhaps it was natural that Dennis would target Elle, who was spending money on him so freely. Dennis skillfully manipulated Elle with his words, making her spend more and more on him. Saying Darla was cute was just part of that manipulation. But Elle took it seriously and kept trying to have Darla meet him. This was during the period when Darla and we grew distant. Once Dennis was confident he had completely drained her financially, he stopped caring about meeting Darla. Around this time, Elle started having money troubles. The amount Dennis was demanding began to exceed her child support payments. That's why she asked us for money under the pretense of buying a backpack. She started leaving Darla with us again to work day and night, and to reduce living expenses. Even then, she couldn't keep up with Dennis's demands. It seems Dennis was trying to push Elle into the night entertainment industry. Whether he intended to cut ties with her or extort more money isn't clear. But in the end, his attempts to threaten her for this purpose led to his downfall. More precisely, it was because he tried to silence Darla with the same threatening treatment as Elle. Darla understood her mother's crisis despite her young age. She understood that if she clearly asked someone for help, her mother would be hurt. That's why she had been struggling all this time. Even after reuniting with us, she kept thinking about how she could convey the situation without speaking. The result she finally came up with was those drawings. The colorful birds were apparently parrots in Darla's imagination. By drawing talking animals instead of people, she thought she could pass it off as just doodling if Dennis found out. Drawing them as a parent and child pair was obviously to represent Elle and Darla. Of course, the frightening thing nearby was none other than Dennis. The masks, X marks, and walls represented the silence forced upon them. That was how she tried to properly convey their situation to us. Everything depicted in that picture told the story of Darla's situation. The detailed information conveyed shows how seriously Darla was dealing with Elle's situation. The numbers at the spider's feet especially showed this. She had picked up the date of Dennis's final ultimatum to Elle from adult conversations she probably didn't want to hear. That's what allowed us to prepare our ambush. Until the very end, Darla depicted Elle as someone trapped alongside herself. This was despite probably experiencing many times, like during the arrest, when Elle neglected her. True love was what Darla possessed. After the incident, when we explained this to Elle, she collapsed in tears. Elle probably wasn't completely devoid of parental affection. However, she still did things that a parent should never do. As a result, when our parents learned about the series of events, they cut family ties with Elle. On top of that, her ex-husband demanded compensation after hearing about the incident. According to her ex-husband, He hadn't asked for compensation during the divorce because he thought it was caused by his own inadequacy. But after the divorce, Elle crossed a line and neglected Darla. This made him realize his judgment back then had been wrong. He thought his failure to be strict had led to Elle's reckless behavior. So he filed for compensation and custody transfer from Elle. Perhaps having her own thoughts about it, Elle readily accepted. Currently, Elle continues to work to pay the compensation and make a living, with no savings. When I saw her in town, she looked emaciated, very different from when I last saw her. I don't know what will become of her, but I hope she can completely change her ways. And then, I hope she properly apologizes to Darla. Dennis was arrested for criminal threatening, but apparently had several other crimes to his name. It seems he had done similar things in the past, which came to light following this arrest. I don't know what charges he'll ultimately face or what punishment he'll receive, but the officer who helped with the arrest said there's no way he'll get off scot-free. I don't think Elle wouldn't have done such foolish things if he hadn't been around. However, it's an undeniable fact that his presence caused this incident. I hope he properly realizes his crimes and then atones for them. As for us, we're living pretty much the same life as before. Though I think we've become even closer with Darla. Elle's ex-husband moved near our house, and he often brings Darla to visit us. These days, on holidays, the four of us go out together and make happy memories. It's probably his way of caring for Darla, who ended up separated from Elle. Elle's actions are unforgivable. Still, the fact that Elle is Darla's mother won't change. I don't know how Darla will come to terms with this fact. To be honest, I'm not even sure if it's possible to come to terms with it. But we'll do our best to love and watch over Darla by her side. We'll lend our strength without hesitation if needed. So that when Darla becomes an adult, she can walk a path with as little sadness as possible.